Hello and welcome to my channel, iWindaloo's Gaming. With another 5-star character comes another potentially very expensive consideration for Constellations. Do Nahida's Constellations live up to our expectations? I'll try my best to answer that question in today's video, where we'll be taking a look at Nahida's Constellations and seeing how much power she gains from each of them. We're going to have a couple different test scenarios for our Nahida in this video. There are two main sources of damage that Nahida can impact. The first is her own damage, which I'll be focusing mainly on her spread damage, and the second is for bloom damage, which I'll focus on this team's hyper bloom damage. We're going to start with Nahida at Constellation 0 and her talents at 6, 9, and 6. She'll be starting off with her signature weapon, 1,000 Floating Dreams at Refinement 1, and she is using the Gilded Dreams artifact set. Her teammates consist of an Elemental Mastery focused Deepwood Memories Kuki Shinobu, who is the activator for Hyper Bloom, a Sacrificial Sword emblem of Severed Fates Xingqiu, and Xiangling for emotional support with over 1,000 Elemental Mastery to provide the maximum 250 Elemental Mastery buff from Nahida's burst. We'll be monitoring how much more her Tri-Karma ticks do on crit and also Kuki's Hyper Bloom damage. At Constellation 0, we can see in this frame that her Tri-Karma hit for 47,950 damage on crit, and the Hyper Blooms are hitting for 28,737 damage. This is our baseline, and I have to severely hold back against our robot chicken friend, because otherwise I'd have to wait 3 minutes every time it dies. This team, even though it's mainly a testing team with Xiangling for emotional support, feels pretty strong already. Anyway, let's move on to her Constellation 1, the Seed of Stored Knowledge. This constellation increases the character count of Pyro, Hydro, and Electro teammates by 1. What this means is that on my current team, which has 1 of each type of element, thanks to Constellation 1, it thinks we have 2 Pyro characters, 2 Hydro characters, and 2 Electro characters on our team. As such, we are now using these 2 characters worth of buffs on her elemental burst. It's difficult to quantify how much more DPS the Electro and Hydro improvements add, but it's simple to quantify the Pyro buff, which resulted in a modest 3.75% increase to her Tri-Karma damage. Now, the difference between the 1 character buff and 2 character buff isn't huge. However, what makes Constellation 1 incredible is that it works even without the element on your team. I didn't realize this until after I had already activated my Constellation, so I don't really have the perfect example, but we can see that in this clip, the Constellation 0 Nahida on the left's burst lasted for only 16 seconds and 12 frames, while the Constellation 1 Nahida with the level 9 burst lasted for 21 and 53 frames. Neither of these Nahida teams have a Hydro teammate, so if you don't have a Pyro, Electro, or Hydro teammate, you also get the massive benefits of having 1 of them on your team, which makes this constellation an incredible thing to have and makes team building feel far less restrictive. And for those curious about how much damage Nahida gains from the Pyro buff if you don't have a Pyro character in your party thanks to her Constellation 1, you gain roughly 10% additional Tri-Karma spread damage with a level 10 burst. Truly a 5 slime out of 5 slime rating. Now here's the big kahuna of Nahida's Constellations, her incredibly sought-after Constellation 2. When Quicken is applied to an enemy, their defense is reduced by a stellar 30%. There's also a 20% essentially crit chance for any type of bloom to deal twice as much damage when it hits an enemy marked by Nahida's elemental skill. Let's talk about the defense shred first. With an Electro teammate, Nahida will be able to reliably activate Quicken, which shreds enemy defense by 30%. As we can see, now her Tri-Karma ticks are doing 58,611 damage, which is a stellar 17.81% increase to her Tri-Karma damage. Defense Shred is fairly rare and it's its own separate multiplier. It also increases all non-reaction based damage from her teammates as well. However, Defense Shred and Ignore Defense are 2 separate multipliers, and I think a lot of you guys will have questions about Raiden's Constellation 2. But because they're 2 separate multipliers, they're actually multiplicative and not additive. Unfortunately, this means that Nahida's Constellation 2 is not that great with Yaimiko's Constellation 6 or Raiden's Constellation 2, which are the same thing. They both ignore 60% defense. Looking at this clip, we can see that Yaimiko's non-aggravate crit did 30,587 damage without Nahida's Constellation 2. And then on the right, it did 33,490 damage with Nahida's Constellation 2. This is only a 9.49% increase to her damage instead of the expected 17.81% increase to damage. Now let's talk about the bloom portion of her Constellation 2. There is a 20% chance for any bloom type damage to do twice the damage against an enemy. We can see here that the hyper blooms here did 57,474 damage on bloom crit. This is an incredible way to boost your bloom damage, and honestly one of the only ways to actually boost your bloom damage. In total, this increases bloom related damage by on average 20%. However, it's very satisfying to see the large damage numbers that these bloom crits can crit for. Overall, her Constellation 2 will increase team damage significantly. This constellation deserves an obvious 5 slime out of 5 slime rating. Up next is her Constellation 3, which provides 3 levels to her elemental skill. Like many recent characters, Nahida's Constellation 3 doesn't increase her spread damage as much as most characters' Constellation 3 improves their damage. This is because a lot of Nahida's damage comes from her spread damage, which does not get increased thanks to her talent level. Nonetheless, because this increases Nahida's primary source of damage from 58,611 from her Constellation 2 version to an impressive 63,806 damage with her Constellation 3. This is still a pretty good constellation and leads to a further 8.86% improvement for her spread damage with my specific build from her Constellation 2. I think it deserves a 4 slime out of 5 slime rating. Up next is her Constellation 4, which is pretty simple and straightforward. It gives 100, 120, 140, 160 Elemental Mastery for tagging 1, 2, 3, and 4 more enemies respectively with her elemental skill. This is a relatively modest stat gain, but it does improve her elemental skill damage by 4.52% against a single target. It also has the added benefit of increasing her normal and charge attack spreads as well, and against a group of 4 enemies, she will gain a bit more damage than this spreadsheet actually indicates. More damage is always great, and I'm giving this one a 3 slime out of 5 slime rating. Her Constellation 5 is simply 3 levels to her Elemental Burst, and this provides some rather small, although non-negligible gains to her damage, Trikarma tick rate, and burst duration. Her Trikarma ticks improved by 2.33% from her Constellation 4 version, so yeah, it's really not that much damage and the gains are pretty small. Overall, a 2.5 slime rating from me. Last but certainly not the least is her Constellation 6. After using her burst, the next 6 normal or charge attacks will activate Trikarma Oblivion if you manage to hit an enemy that is tagged by her elemental skill with said normal or charge attack. Each Trikarma Oblivion deals 200% attack and 400% Elemental Mastery worth of damage. What makes this incredible is that you can hit any enemy tagged by her elemental skill with a normal or charge attack, and every enemy tagged by her elemental skill will take significant damage. Unfortunately, it does have standard ICD, so it won't spread on every tick. We can see here that her Constellation 6 Trikarma Oblivions are doing 67,083 damage per spread and 36,280 damage without spread. You can usually get 2 and sometimes 3 of her Trikarma Oblivion ticks to actually spread. Overall, this is an incredible constellation and effectively roughly doubles her DPS for the first 6 or so auto attacks, perhaps even more than double. I'm giving this an easy 5 slime out of 5 slime rating. The last upgrade that doesn't come from her constellations is refining her weapon to refinement 5. Nahida's signature weapon scales better than most with its refinements, since the bonus elemental damage scales by 40% per refinement instead of the standard 20%. However, the EM team buff, starting at 40 at refinement 1, only gains a comically low 2 elemental mastery per refinement. The point being, it provides a very substantial 16.3% overall damage gain in comparison to a Constellation 6 refinement 1 Nahida, at least for my Nahida specific build. This is a very powerful upgrade for Nahida and deserves a 5 slime out of 5 slime rating. So by the time we hit Constellation 6, Nahida's spreads are doing roughly 42.3% more damage, and with Refinement 5 she is then doing about 65.52% more damage on her spreads. However, this does not account for her Constellation 6 Trikarma Oblivion ticks, which are extremely powerful. With those, Nahida is able to front load hundreds of thousands of damage. Overall, her Constellations 1 and 2 are exceptional, as most of us could have guessed. However, for those expecting it to take your Constellation 2 Raiden to the next level, unfortunately it's only a modest 9.49% increase to a Constellation 2 Raiden's damage due to the aforementioned defense ignore and reduction mechanics. As for Constellation 6 Refinement 5 Nahida, she feels very powerful, with honestly the main thing holding her back being the lack of an immediately huge nuke like Hydro characters can do and the very long burst animation. Nonetheless, watching enemies get their ashes spread from a hopscotching small Dendro Archon is quite a lot of fun. Also, I regularly make Genshin Impact videos ranging from C0 showcases, DPS showdowns, guide videos, and more. So be sure to smash the subscribe button, as it's the best and easiest way for you to support my work. Also, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.